In 1986 Scotland, Angela and Jackson Sayers are siblings who make a living out of scamming people who believe their houses are haunted. The duo also works with Beth and Elliot. They introduce themselves as paranormal investigators, even though they know nothing in that field. One day, the team receives a booking from a small family whose mother just recently died. Jackson assures Susie, the daughter, that they will communicate with the mother and bring her to heaven. Beth and Elliot operate on the technical part of their scheme. Angela initiates the interview as preparation for contacting spirits. Frank, the father, tells her that his wife's nickname is Maddie. Angela writes all the information while the others try to act like they're detecting energies around the room. Frank asks about Angela's mother, who has also passed recently. Because of this, she gets into a sad mood all of a sudden. Maddie was a tailor. Most of the time, she was always in the basement sewing clothes. Angela and Elliot, who are the cameramen, head to the basement and call Maddie's name. The room is dark and filled with mannequins that have caught dust. As she tries to talk to the spirit, Beth signals Elliot to play some recorded voice. This excites Frank, believing that he has a chance to communicate with his late wife. The session ends abruptly after Angela says that Maddie is now out of the house and at peace. Before going upstairs to leave, Angela takes a last look at the dark basement. She notices 3 mannequins by the window, so she stares at them intently. Suddenly, the mannequin in the middle takes the form of Maddie and tries to attack Angela. She blacks out and wakes up with a bleeding nose. At the moment, she is scared and confused, but Elliot helps her up. That night, they celebrated in a nightclub after their successful session. Beth shows them an advertisement in pamphlet form of their medium service. The team uses the reputation of the siblings' late mother to promote Angela's powers as a medium. Elliot and Angela are not convinced with the idea, so they walk out. Jackson orchestrates the sessions because of the debt he owes to loan sharks. Elliot checks up on Angela about the basement. She thinks that the team is just playing a prank on her about Maddie and the mannequin, but Elliot tells her that he has no idea what she is talking about. As soon as Angela arrives home, she browses through pictures of her mother. She sees an envelope from Laurel Creek Psychiatric Hospital. She continues to read some of her mother's belongings and eventually falls asleep. The following day, she receives a call from a potential client seeking help. The woman on the phone sounds frantic, so Angela tells her that they are unavailable. She puts down the phone, but the caller is determined to contact them. The college dean calls Angela's attention for brief counseling. She is concerned about Angela because recently, she is unable to submit assignments and attend class. Angela says that she has not been feeling well for the past couple of days. The dean brings out a newspaper article titled "American Ghost Hunters Saved My Family Home." She is now aware of the reason for Angela's incompetence in school. However, Angela defends herself by saying that she does it for extra money. While the dean sermons her about the importance of focusing in school, Angela hears a distant whisper calling her name. She glances at the closed door and notices the knob move. Eventually, the door opens, and a person with seemingly bloody hands enters. Angela is confused. The dean tells her that her nose is bleeding. She makes her way out of the building to visit her grandfather. Angela is extremely close to her grandfather and visits him regularly. They talk about Angela's mother while she's there, but her grandfather refuses to talk about his daughter and dismisses the topic. Eventually, he gets up and complains about how her mother talked about hearing voices and seeing paranormal things. This catches Angela off guard, and she breaks into tears because she worries that she might end up like her. Later that day, Angela looks into the history of the caller's house and discovers that the owner's foster children were all found dead. The Sayers receive another phone call regarding their services. As Angela arrives home, Jackson welcomes him with his face covered in scars and bruises. After a man he owes money to beats him. He asks her why she declined a client who was an old woman. She says that scary things go around that house. But her brother gets irritated after bringing up their mother. This is still a sensitive topic for the both of them. Their mother wound up committing suicide because she saw people who weren't there. Angela walks out and has a meltdown in her room. Beth packs her things because she is afraid of the men that may hurt them if Jackson fails to bring back the money he borrowed. That night, Angela wakes up in the middle of the night after hearing noises outside her room. She goes downstairs and sees her mother in the kitchen without eyes. She realizes that it is just a nightmare and talks to her brother about their new client. Jackson, needing the money to pay off the loan sharks, agrees to the job, despite reluctance from his sister. They drive to the countryside where the house is located. Angela cannot stop thinking about her dream and seems bothered during the whole trip. They arrive at a gated community, and an old caretaker opens it for them. All 4 of them observe the house's exterior and sense an eerie feeling. Mrs. Green, the caller, welcomes the team to the home as she gives a tour. Mrs. Green is a very traditional woman. She highly values good manners and common etiquette. Jackson hands her over the payslip, but Mrs. Green says she will sign it after the service is rendered. Angela begins the interview about Mrs. Green's concerns. According to her, screaming, laughter, and giggles were what she heard initially. But over time, it turned into angry and taunting noises. She reveals that it has been 15 years since Herman, her son, committed the act. Mrs. Green blames herself for not paying close attention to her son in his early years, resulting in the death of the young girls. She breaks into tears, but the team empathizes with her, saying that it was not her fault and they will help her get back to her quiet house. Angela asks for photos of the girls, which Mrs. Green willingly shares. She introduces her to the girls through old photographs she keeps. A picture of Herman surfaces. He seems like a kind boy based on the picture. Jackson goes around the house to observe its corners and rooms. It is mostly dark, and the furniture is quite antique. He runs into the caretaker, which frightens him. Jackson and his team of technicians formulate a plan to con Mrs. Green. Their usual act is playing pre-recorded sounds that seem like spirits to make their clients believe they have supernatural abilities. While the three of them are planning, Angela looks seriously worried. She hears a little girl humming by the staircase and is shocked to see her walking around the house. Her nose bleeds again, so she heads to the bathroom to clean up. While looking at the mirror, a dark shadow passes behind her, but she sees nothing. Elliot checks up on her if she is fine. She hears noises from the cubicles, so she opens the doors one by one to find its source. Elliot asks her if everything is okay, but she is focused on her senses. Upon checking the last cubicle, a laughing girl passes by abruptly. She and Elliot hide inside one cubicle, but instead of seeing Elliot, she sees a little girl with mouth sewn shut, so she faints. Angela gains consciousness, and the rest of the team is concerned about her well-being except her brother. He shows no remorse over forcing Angela into the con but still reminds his sister that he loves her. Mrs. Green demands explanations on how the services work. Jackson starts to explain, but she interrupts him by hinting that she has doubts about the team. While getting ready, Elliot asks about the incident earlier. Angela has second thoughts about telling him because he might not believe it. Elliot eventually confesses how he feels about Angela, and they both smile before starting to film. They communicate with Beth and Jackson through the radio. Elliot follows Angela to several areas of the house while Mrs. Green observes them from a screen. In a dark room, Angela calls out the girl's name to initiate communication, but none of the spirits respond. They enter a bedroom where they find a record player with eerie music. Angela sees a doll in one corner, and she touches it. She senses something just outside the room. Both of them go out to check. In one of the hallways, a girl stands, staring at Angela blankly. She pulls out a girl's picture and confirms her identity. She gets a little freaked out because Elliot doesn't see anything. She follows them into the restricted east wing. In the control room, Mrs. Green is concerned that they go there. A spirit lowers Angela into the restricted area, and she follows, as well as Elliot, who is recording the entire thing. As they walk toward a room, the floor collapses, causing Elliot to fall. During his fall, the camera is still recording. Jackson comes to the east wing to help them out. He thinks that this act is part of their gimmick, but he is wrong. Jackson insists that they have to carry on despite Elliot's injuries because they have to finish the job. They use a ladder to get to Elliot. Jackson picks up a creepy doll while they look around. On the wall, messages are written. This is the room where the little girls were held captive and died. The siblings tear the remaining wallpaper to see more clearly, and they find out disturbing messages. The camera pans in their direction. Mrs. Green notices that they manage to see the writings on the wall. Angela confesses to her older brother that she has been seeing and hearing paranormal things since their last gig. He dismisses her by saying that the messages are just doodles. Angela talks back and says that the events are not coincidences. They help Elliot up, who has an injured ankle. Angela takes a last look at the basement before she goes up. She tells her brother that she is done scamming people, but he disagrees with the idea. The two of them end up in a heated argument. Jackson sees Mrs. Green sitting still in a room. He tries to talk to her, but she informs Jackson that they have failed, and she believes them to be scam artists. She tearfully says that Herman is not at fault, and the girls deserve their fate. Jackson leaves the room and hints that she was involved in the girls' murders. Jackson hurriedly contacts the team through the radio as he senses that something is off about their client. It is dark in the house, and Jackson struggles to find Beth, who happens to be his girlfriend. He goes to the area they used as a control room and sees things completely in a mess. He turns around and sees a spirit directly in front of him. He is in complete disbelief and steps back out of fear. The girls continue to approach him, but he gets back to his senses when he hears Angela over the radio to call for backup. They struggle to drag Elliot, so they find Beth, but she is nowhere to be found. They see her necklace lying on the floor with spats of blood everywhere. Out of nowhere, a little girl appears in the lift, which frightens the siblings. Angela realizes that her brother shares the same abilities. They get their sixth sense from their late mother. Beth's radio tries to communicate, but Jackson fails to hear anything he could understand. He enters the lift to look for Beth, believing that the girls are trying to help them. Inside the lift, lights flicker, and laughter can be heard. He sees a glimpse of his mother, but the feeling overwhelms him. He walks through an empty hallway, following the radio signal. He opens the entrance to the attic and finds Beth unconscious with her mouth sewn shut. Her face is drenched with blood while Jackson tries to comfort her. From the screen, Angela sees a figure walking toward the basement. She wakes Elliot up so they could escape before anything worse happens. She safely assists Elliot in the car. She sees a teddy bear lying on the grass, which she thinks belongs to one of the girls who died in the basement. Clueless and afraid, they wait for Jackson and Beth in the car. They make it to the vehicle. Angela asks what happened to Beth, but Jackson fails to answer her. He is phased as he drives their way out. He starts hearing giggling noises and sees one girl standing in the middle of the road. He refuses to stop, thinking that it is just his imagination, so he runs her over. The girl on the road is just his imagination. In reality, the house caretaker was the one run over, causing the old man to die. Jackson crashes the car into a tree, killing Beth. The crash throws her out of the car. Jackson approaches her lifeless body and hugs her for the last time. Herman appears from behind him and hits him with a shovel, which knocks him unconscious. Angela is still unconscious because of the crash, but Elliot is awake. Herman approaches the car. He drags Elliot out and hits him with the shovel as well. Angela finally gains consciousness. She goes outside the vehicle to see Beth's corpse. The feeling of fear and confusion takes over her. She tries to wake up Elliot, but he struggles to speak when asked about Jackson. Without a choice, Angela makes her way back to the house to rescue her brother. Jackson is tied in a chair with his face covered in blood. Mrs. Green and Herman enter the room, planning something sinister for the young man. As Angela makes her way to the door, a little girl awaits her. While taunting Jackson, Mrs. Green cuts out his tongue, hammers his teeth, and sews his mouth shut. Meanwhile, Elliot regains his strength and tries to crawl back to the house to help his friends. Angela enters a room full of toys, thinking that it would lead her to her brother, but Herman captures her. She wakes up to see her older brother beside her, completely helpless. She apologizes to him for being unable to help him in time. Mrs. Green orders Herman to bring Jackson to the shed. Angela begs her to let him go because he's the only thing she has left. Elliot manages to kill Herman with a knife just as Mrs. Green gets started on Angela. He comes to Angela to untie and help her. Mrs. Green holds her son as he loses his life gradually. She attacks Elliot to get her revenge, recklessly stabbing him with a butcher knife. The spirits of the dead girls appear, and Angela pleads and begs with them to help. Before she could hit him one more time, the girls begin to scream, distracting Mrs. Green long enough for Angela to free herself and kill her. Mrs. Green falls to the ground, and the little girls fade into thin air. Angela walks out of the house, limping to the road for help. Angela sees Jackson's ghost searching for Beth before wandering away. She breaks into tears after realizing that she has no family left. A car passes by and runs to her rescue. Angela and Elliot are taken to the hospital. They hold each other's hands after surviving the traumatic encounter. On the phone with her grandfather, Angela confidently tells him, "I'm not alone," as a dark shadow passes over her, assuming it's Jackson or her mother. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.